So as you will obviously know as a programmer, you spend half your time dealing with errors and error handling, and in Go, of course, there is an error type, and there are various different ways of creating errors. Obviously, most of the time you may well be just looking at errors coming back from functions you're calling, but occasionally you need to generate your own, and there are a few different ways of doing that. And so I'm going to take you through how to generate errors. So obviously, within Go, there's this built-in type error, which I'm going to look at in a minute, is actually an interface type, and it just has one function in it. But for the moment, let's pretend we don't know the details. So obviously we have an error, and if we want to generate an error with a string in it, there's two really simple ways to do it. So we can do the following. We can use the errors package, and that allows us to do something like, fatal exception or something. And if I bring in errors, then suppose that's happened, and then I want to print it out. Let's just do that. So I've created something like that, and go run. Okay, so there you go. So there's that particular error, and this is an error. It can be returned from a function that requires an error. It is of the error type. Now it's a little bit inflexible because it just takes a string, and maybe you want to include some more information in there. And within the format package, there's a nice little function. Let's just ask GoDoc about it. Error f, which is a standard printf type function, and it returns an error. It returns something that satisfies the error interface. So we could use that perhaps. So we can do error f, and then we can do, a problem occurred with something and thing, and let's just say thing equals my module. So that's just going to create a standard thing, and I'm no longer going to need the errors package. And run that, a problem occurred with my module. So that gives you a way to create an error string. That's great if you want to pass around just a string and you don't need the rest of your program to know what type of error it is, but sometimes it's handy to know the type of error, and the simplest way to do that within one of your packages is to declare something. So we could say error bad startup. Let's say something failed on startup, and then just do it within here. We go errors new failed to start correctly, and then obviously that thing is an error. I need the errors package again, and I can go in here and just go error equals error bad startup. Whoops. Remember my braces here. Right, so error failed to start correctly. But the other good thing is I can actually do things like this. Then we'll do something. Let's actually cheat and say we're going to ignore that. Right, so it no longer prints that because it knows that particular thing. And this is extremely useful if those errors are declared with a capital letter at the beginning, so i.e. public, in some package. So if you have some package where you have some errors you want to work with, then you can do these comparisons and know the type of the error without having to do silly things with string matching. So that's the basic things. Now, error itself is actually just an interface. And in fact, it's just an interface like this. It's type error interface, and it has an error function, and the error function returns a string. So anything that has an error function is an error. So we could take any sort of type and add that to it. And this can be particularly useful if you wanted to augment something with extra information about the type of error. So we could have a type, so my error, and for example, maybe there's obviously a string which tells us what the error is, but there also might be a time when it happened. So we could bring in the time package and we could say when this error occurred, and then we could come into here and we could say, right, I just need to declare error on that. So my error, it has to have an error string, and it has to return a string, and then we could use that to printf out when this occurred. So we could go in here and say that happened at, and then we could say when. So we could go in here and we could say when, and we'll go into here and then we'll create one of these. Let's just do that. So error : equals my error, and we can set its string to bad thing, when equals time.now. So we've got all those things in place, and then this thing is in fact an error, so we could return it whenever the error type is needed, and we could use it within other functions that require errors. So what's good here is that as soon as you declare that, you are an error within Go, and you can create something that's much more structured than you might do just with a simple string. And you'll see this used quite a lot within the Go standard library, particularly in the OS package with things like path errors and other types of errors which are defined, which have more information. So the error function needs to actually return a string, so we'll fix that to use sprintf. And now that we've got this error, we can print it out like we might do with any other error. So I'm just going to simply do that. That's going to call the appropriate error function to get a string, and what we'll see is that we get bad thing, which was the name of the error, and actually the time we're recording this right now. And so there you've got a compound error, if you like, which has more information than just one created with format.errorf or errors.new.